while dreams excite some, for others, it brings discouragement and disappointment. I'm sorry to have to bring this message. My wife bailed on me. She was meant to do it, and now I got to do it. She's not been well, so I said I'd step in. But the truth is, for some people, the dream has been broken or unfulfilled. How long have you been hanging on to that dream, Carol? Decades, at least. Yeah. Good. Well, we're going to talk about that. That's awesome. And I don't want to sound negative. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. However, listen to me. Unfulfilled dreams could actually be God's delays. Let me say it again. Broken or unfulfilled dreams are often delayed dreams. I was a relatively new Christian, got my first Bible, and I had this belief in me that God wanted me to go into ministry. I didn't know where, what kind of ministry, what that would look like. I was a brand new Christian. I went to a university to begin to prepare for ministry, and I was in my second semester of uni, and I believe God gave me the dream of ministry in Australia, February 1977. I was pumped. I was excited. And I started to plan to spend my summer months in Australia to come here and get a taste of what it's like. And, you know, we didn't even know each other at that stage, and just start setting the platform for ministry in Australia. So I started asking people, hey, would you pray for me? Would you consider supporting me on a mission for the summer months? And things were coming together, and I was pumped. And then all of a sudden, a significant leader called me into his office. And his first words were, how dare you? Now here I am. I'm less than 2 years old as a Christian. Man, that was like, he just threw water on the fire. And he just spent the next 10 minutes telling me off. How dare you? And I remember walking out of that office thinking, well, it must not be God. Because I expected him to be excited, to support it. Now, here's the deal. I am not running him down. The Bible says, regardless of how leaders treat us, we're supposed to treat them with respect and honor and prayer, regardless of what they do to us. But I went away thinking, I must have got it wrong. Couldn't be God. Truly, he could have handled that situation better, but I look back on it and you know what? My doubts were necessary delay. I'm telling you. Listen to me on this, because delayed dreams can create opportunity for testing. Was it really from God? It also creates opportunity for confirming. Well, if it is God, it'll remain. And he'll show you it remains. But it also creates a time of developing. Because often, now listen to me on this, you need to hear this. The dream, the dreamer, and the context where the dream happens needs to be developed. It wasn't just about me, and it wasn't just about the dream, it was about where the dream would happen. But then finally, delays lead us to the fulfilling of the dream. It actually happens. 5 years later, a wife, 10-week-old baby, 3 suitcases, and one-way tickets. We were headed to Whyalla. And we had never even visited Australia. All we saw were some pictures of Whyalla. And not very encouraging if you're looking at that. But as far as we're concerned, that's our dream. And there's a narrative in the book of Genesis that tells us this story. If you'd like to take your Bible and turn to Genesis chapter 12. I think some of you probably, you've heard me preach long enough thinking, does Keith even have an Old Testament? Yes, I do. But I admit it, I am a Pauline fanatic. In other words, I love the writings of Paul. So Genesis 12, now listen, if you really want to get the whole story, you've got to read from Genesis 12 to Genesis 22. Okay, to get the whole story. And we're going to jump around in there a bit, but don't worry, we're not doing 12 chapters. Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. Can I just see something? Who's got their analog Bible with them? Hold it up. We'll buy one for the rest of you. I got notes and I've got scriptures. Okay, here we go. Now the Lord said to Abram. Now you're going to notice we talk about Abram, we talk about Abraham. They're not the same name. In that day, people were named for their destiny. Okay? You might not realize this, but your parents might have thought something about your future when they gave you a name. I was the only kid growing up in this primary school in America with the name Keith. I hated it. And it's not really my name, it's my middle name. My real name is Charles. I don't like that either. But until I found out what Keith means, and it's got a few funky meanings like from the woods, and I'm going, all right, I love camping in the woods, but I don't like living in them. And then I found the Celtic meaning, from the battleground. Come on. Anyway, Abram literally means father, exalted father. Abraham, God changed his name a few chapters later. God said, you're no longer Abram, I am calling you Abraham. In other words, you are not going to be known as just a father, but now you're going to be a father of many, and in particular, nations. And he had no kids. By the time he got that word from God, he was about 85 years old. No, probably longer. All right, let's keep going. Sorry. The Lord said to Abram, leave your country, your people, your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. By the way, that covenant is still on us today as children of Abraham. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Jesus traces his lineage all the way back to this promise. So Abram left. That's important. In other words, he did what God said to do. Lot went with him. That's his nephew. Abram was 75. Who wants a dream at 75? 75 years old. He set out from Haran. Did you know Colonel Harlan Sanders got the dream for Kentucky Fried Chicken when he was in his late 60s? Henry Ford. I mean, you name it. Who said we've gone past our use-by date?
Not me.
Thank you. And not God. Good. I'm sick and tired of hearing about give it to the young people. No, forgive me, Lord. No, but true. They shall bear fruit in old age. Okay, anyway, let's talk about the beginnings, where dreams start. We don't know a lot about Abraham at this point, except, believe it or not, he was from Iraq. And he was a pagan. We didn't even know if he knew who God was. I love what Ross says in his commentary. Abram was middle-aged, prosperous, settled, and thoroughly pagan. The word of the Lord came to him. Isn't that amazing that God will talk to pagans? Well, he talked to me. I wouldn't call myself a pagan, but I was a heathen. Though it's not known exactly how God spoke to him, and he responded by faith and obediently left everything to follow God's plan. And we don't know why God chose Abraham to give him this dream. There's nothing about him that qualifies him. We didn't know he even knew who God was, but God showed up in his world. And I'll tell you what, when I came to faith in God, I wasn't looking for God. I didn't want God. As a matter of fact, I liked the way I was living, but he wanted me. And he didn't give up till I said yes. I love that about God. One author calls him the hound of heaven. He just keeps nipping at the heels. He's almost like a pit bull. When he grabs you by the Achilles, you're going nowhere. But here's the deal. What we do know about Abram is this. He met with God, and that's where the dream began. And it shows us, listen to me, people go, well, God in the New Testament is a God of grace. God in the Old Testament is a God of law. I beg to differ with you. This is hundreds of years before the law. Do you see what's happening here? God is moving on a pagan man by grace. And you're going to see it time and time again in this story. And last week, Greg mentioned that we need to ensure that the dream comes from God. It can't just be a whim or a selfish ambition. And he doesn't give us a dream because we deserve it, we earn it. He does it because of his grace. I want you. I like you. I'm going to anoint you for this. That's what he says. But listen, even grace calls for a response. Hear me on this. Right at the beginning, God gives 2 directives, and they come in the form of a command. Nothing less than 2 commands. It wasn't, hey, if you'd like to do this, Abraham, it'd be nice. Let me just give a side note here, because we live in an age right now in the church where some people have taught that grace gives you the freedom to do anything you want. Garbage. God's grace does not excuse us from obedience. Yeah, I will say it again. God's grace does not excuse us from being obedient. So here we go. Here's the commands that God says to Abram. Leave. That's a big thing. Leave your father, leave your household, leave your people, leave your country, leave it all behind and go. Go where? You just take one foot and put it in front of the other and I'll keep directing you. Don't make your plans, I'll guide your steps. That's what it says in Proverbs. And I want to tell you, if you understand the time and the culture, this is a big deal. To leave his father's house and family meant giving up his identity, his security, his birthrights, and his inheritance, and going to a strange land where people probably didn't even speak the same language. I know how that feels. I came here and I don't speak the same language as you anyway. We used to have, there was a lot of Poms in our church in Whyalla. They came over for steel making and ship making and whatnot. We had this old Pommy guy, great old guy, Harry. And he used to walk out every Sunday morning, shake my hand, in his broad English brogue. Good sermon today, Pastor, good sermon today. 6 months later, he walks out, big grin on his face, and he said, "That was awesome, Pastor Keith. This is the first time I ever understood you." I thought, you beggar, you've been lying to me for 6 months. Anyway, hopefully you can understand me. But here's the deal. This meant Abraham had to step out into the unknown. Janet and I had never even seen anything but photographs of Australia or stuff in the old books that are in the museum called a library, and they're called Encyclopedia Britannica, because there was nothing else. No road map. People say to us, why Allah of all places? That's God. How odd of God. But Abraham was not given a GPS or a road map to the land of his dreams, and he's not going to do that with you. All right, God, show me everything about it, and then I'll do it. That's not how God works, because that's not faith. That's calculation. And this, Abraham, it was an absolute act of faith, and this is why he is known as the father of faith. You realize that 3 of the world's major religions call Abraham their father? Do you realize that? Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all call Abraham their father, because every one of us spawned out of him. Here's the deal. What do we get out of this? Well, it's when we seek God, he gives us a dream by his grace. And I want to tell you, I sometimes feel totally amazed and unworthy that God would trust me with a dream that brought us here. Of all people, a boy from Alabama, Lord have mercy. I probably couldn't even spell Australia. From a broken home, from low social standing, absolutely no faith background whatsoever. And I tell you, that's just grace. But for the dream to begin, it requires faith and obedience. I said to Greg last week, faith and obedience is like the hand in the glove. That glove is going to lay on the table impotent until the hand goes in it and moves it. Your faith is powerless until you step out in obedience. Faith without works is dead. And so God said, I'm calling you, but you're going to have to take a step into the unknown and the uncomfortable. So let's read on in the narrative, because we're going to see that sometimes, I said it before, delays are when dreams are shaped. Unfulfilled dreams are delayed dreams. Abraham's dream took 25 years before it actually started. Well, really, it started with God telling him, but when it became material and he could see it in front of his eyes, 25 years from the day God said, I'll make you the father of nations and they'll be blessed through you, down 25 years later, Isaac is born, who we know as one of the fathers of the faith. For us, it was 5 years. 1977, God gave me a dream. 1982, we landed here. 5 years. Well, I'll tell you what, everything wasn't great during those 5 years, but I'll tell you another thing too. There were great things that did happen during those 5 years. Because God's no is often not yet. People say, God didn't answer my prayer. Yeah, he did. He said no. That's an answer. Like, what part of no don't you understand? You used to have to say that to our kids all the time. I thought, I finally get to say it. What part of no don't you understand? Because, in other words, God's delays are often God's preparations. Whoa. Let me come back to my story. I was not ready to come to Australia in 1977. It was going to take more than zeal and excitement. I needed a lot of rough edges knocked off. I needed to get strengthened in my faith. I needed to learn obedience, and my character was under development. Still is. But here's the deal. These things would prepare me for a dream that would go beyond a moment and last a lifetime. I was thinking for a moment, summer holidays. God's going, no. When you go, you're going for life. No, serious. It's one of the tough things we had to say to our families. We had nothing. We're university students. I had a motorcycle. We had furniture. Sold some, gave some away, put it away for tickets. Janet's parents saying, you need to hang on to that stuff just in case it doesn't work. One-way tickets. And God had to get me ready for a dream for a lifetime. Had I rushed it and done it in my own strength, it would only lasted for a moment. Yeah, I would have had a good time in Australia for a summer, but I probably would have messed up a lot of stuff. Don't get me wrong, the pursuit of the dream requires surrender, faith, and obedience, but it's impossible to make that dream happen in your own strength and with your natural abilities. If you can do that, it's not a dream from God. Now, let's go back. We're going to go to Genesis 16. You notice that his wife is not named Sarah, but Sarai. Then God changes her name to Sarah because she laughed. Oh, I heard you laugh, don't lie. He actually said that. Anyway, verse 1, chapter 16. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. This is big in that day. Now we're talking, he's probably a good 90 plus. But she had an Egyptian maidservant named Hagar. Hagar, by the way, is the mother of all Muslims. So she said to Abram, the Lord has kept me from having children. Now, don't you love this? Go sleep with my maidservant. Most men would go, yes! Anyway, we don't have a maidservant and I'm not cheering. Anyway, perhaps I can build a family through her. Abraham, being a typical man, well, honey, if you really want me to do that, it's going to take sacrifice, but yeah, sure. Send her in. Watch this. So after Abram been living in Canaan 10 years, he waited 10 years. Sarai's wife took her Egyptian maidservant, Hagar, and gave her to her husband to be his wife. In other words, well, Lord, it's kind of taken a long time. I have this conversation with God. Like, come on, Lord. You're going to have to speed up. You're the Ancient of Days, but I'm not. I'm not going to last that long. Get on with it. And I can imagine, well, Lord, it's not happening, so we're going to help you make the dream happen. Verse 4, he slept with Hagar and she conceived. When she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. Imagine what this poor woman must have thought. I'm being used here. I'm a surrogate factory. Then Sarai said to Abram, I love this, you're responsible. You did it. You caused my suffering. I put my servant in your arms and now she knows she's pregnant. She despises me. Oh, look at this last phrase. May the Lord judge between you and me. Damn you. That's like, hello. Janet often says to me, you're the husband and the husband is always wrong. He's at fault. He is the fault. I don't know where she got that from. Some bloody-minded Christian counselor or whatever, but ridiculous. Anyway, poor old Abraham. All he did was what was natural. Anyway, Abraham, here's the point. Abraham listened to his wife. Not that it's a bad thing, but he listened to the wrong things. Because listening to her made him stop listening to God. It made him, if you don't listen to God, you don't trust God. And it caused him to doubt. They devised a plan to make the dream happen. Be careful, because delays can cause us to doubt. Did God say? Did he really give me a dream? Am I good enough for that dream? Surely somebody else. I mean, that was Moses' first thing. God, I don't talk well. Send my brother. You got the wrong guy. And if we lose heart in a time of delay, if you're in a time of delay and you lose heart, you start listening to the doubt voices. And you get tempted to try to make it happen yourself. That's what I was trying to do. Strassner, in his commentary called Opening Up Genesis, said this. Now, here's another lesson for us who wish to obey the Lord. If, as we said earlier, our obedience to God arises from our faith in God, then we're in big trouble the moment we stop trusting in God and start devising our own plans. If you're in a delay, don't start making plans. Sit, wait, listen. Don't be tempted to do what Abraham did and create your own plan for the dream to happen. I love the fact that God gave us this story. He didn't pull any punches. Why? Because the Bible teaches that we learn from their mistakes. It doesn't mean God's going, look at them, aren't they idiots? No, he's going, they're human. They're broken. They're flawed. So are you. And you will make mistakes. But if you learn from them, you won't repeat them. So I would encourage you to get a cup of coffee and sit down and read, just in one sitting, Genesis 12 to 22. Read it all the way through. What's incredible is that when you read the story, you're going to see this. Abraham messes up 3 times. I don't have time to talk about all that. And yet God's grace still worked through him. He literally became the epitome of faith in the Bible. If you went to Hebrews chapter 11, it's called the Hall of Faith. God talks about all these people of faith. 12 verses in the book of Hebrews are attributed to Abraham's faith, even though he messed up. And I'm glad that God is honest in the Bible. He doesn't sugarcoat the stories and make them sound perfect and they never did anything wrong. If that were so, then we would never measure up. And it gives you and I hope. God gives dreams to broken, imperfect people. That's you and me. So whatever it is that you think you did that disqualified you, let that thought go. That's a doubt. Just reject it. So what was it that kept Abraham believing that the dream would happen? Well, let's go back to the story. We're going to go all the way back, flick back to Genesis 12. Here's what God gave him, confirmation. How the dreams are made true and sure. Because during a time of delay, if the dream is from God and there's a delay, he will come to you. He will confirm to you, it was me, just keep listening. Wait upon the Lord and you'll get, what? New strength. So in Genesis 12:6, Abram traveled through the land as far as the site of the great tree of Moreh and Shechem. So he's now in Canaan. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, so here's the second time God has spoken to him that we know of. First time, I'm going to make you a blessing. Now, Abram, listen to me. You and your people, your offspring, will have this land. It's yours. And it will be yours from now on. So what does he do? He built an altar there to the Lord. First thing he does. Verse 8, from there he went on toward the hills east of Bethel and pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built another altar to the Lord and he called on the name of the Lord. What do we see here? In moving towards a dream, he gets the dream, he starts the journey. Abraham exercises, and here it is, obedience. And when he's obedient, God responds with clarity and said, I love this. Let me tell you, Abram, it's going to happen, but look around you. This is what you're getting. Abraham moves towards the dream with worship, dedication, and sacrifice. Dreams do cost. You don't buy it, but you dedicate and sacrifice for it. Time doesn't allow, but if you read on in Genesis 15, 17, and 18, it shows us all through those 25 years, God shows up in his world in miraculous ways and just confirms to him again and again. Even though Abram did some things that were stupid, I'm glad of that because I've done some stupid things. You know how what Cousin Forrest said, Mom always said, stupid is, stupid does. Man, I know stupid. But God still confirms. And he does it in a number of ways. Trust him, worship him, walk with him, and he'll show you. And you know what? Sometimes he gives confirmation when and where and how we least expect it. People rock up, they'll go to a prophetic conference. Oh, I just need to get that word. You're probably not going to get it. It's going to come from somewhere and somebody you're least expecting. Let me go back to Argentina. God had been doing things in our world that was it was obviously God. We were at a stage in life where if we were ever going to go back to America, it was time. The kids' age, we'd been there for a while. But we knew, hey, if we were to go back to America, it's not because of family, it's because God calls us. He called us here, and if he wants us to go somewhere else, he'll call us again. But we were wrestling with this. God, what are you saying? And kind of felt like we're having revival in Waiala, and I kind of felt like Philip, that God was going to out of Samaria and takes him off to a desert road. Nobody knew the questions that I was asking God except Janet. Nobody. Went to the revival in Argentina at the invitation of Ed Silvoso. I literally was expecting everywhere I went, somebody's going to call me out of the crowd and go, thus saith the Lord, boom, and away it'd go. Nada. Nothing. The last weekend, Ed Silvoso said, I want you guys to take a team up to Resistencia where revival began, and I want you to meet your cousins in revival. Yeah, okay, cool. All kind of things happen. And I don't have time to tell you. Amazing, amazing story in this poor city where revival was poured out. We got down to the last day. It was a Sunday. We're in a largish kind of AOG church. And the pastor came up to us and said in broken English, we're not having a sermon. We're not having worship today. We're shutting down the church service so that you and your team can pray over our children so they'll take revival to the world. At that stage, I felt like I wanted to crawl in a hole and die. I felt so unworthy to do that. So anyway, we each had a translator, an interpreter attached to us to translate what we were praying into. So I tried to hide, but it didn't matter. People started lining up, kids. So I did the nice pastor's prayer. It was so patronizing, I'm ashamed to say. I did the best I could because I was dying inside because God wasn't talking to me. And I prayed for a few kids and they're lining up. And then all of a sudden, this little Spanish girl I think she's about 12 years old, walks up looking down, very humble. And then interpreter said, this little girl wants to pray for you and your ministry. And I said, oh, that'd be nice. So she tells her in Spanish to go ahead. Little girl slowly looks up, puts one hand on one shoulder, the other hand on the other shoulder, and looks in my eyes, and I went, oh, no. And she started praying fluently one of the Psalms that God had given to David as a leader. And she flowed from that Psalm into the prophetic and answered all my questions. Then she disappeared into the crowd. And man, I thought, God, we've got to stop telling you how to do it. And I'm telling you, God will show up in ways you don't expect, through people you would never expect. want you to bow your heads, close your eyes. If you've come to the place where your dream seems like it's gone or dead or broken or never going to happen, I've got good news for you today. God's delays are God's promises and his preparation.